Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Tomenaga, the crossover and the finish. One more at the line.
And this is a young man coming in shooting 51% from the floor on the year.
Brissol, count it, and the foul. And a fast-moving first half. When you didn't expect it at the beginning of the year. Dawson trying for another one. Denham Dawson.
Bail out the Cornhuskers.
Brissol, baseline. Tough pass, Benjamin, good catch, drive, finish.
Great court awareness, especially over the last 2 or 3 possessions.
Pursuing, attacking now. Buckeyes have to have a little urgency. They'll try the three in the corner and sends the ball. Delivers in a big moment for the Buckeyes. 2 seconds. McNeil. A look to tie. No! And Nebraska sends the Buckeyes to their 5th straight loss. 63-60.
Sure was a good look from Ohio State at game's end. It's Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. We're happy to have you with us, and hopefully you are getting to work safe this morning as you're listening on 590 ESPN, 1480 ESPN as well, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. And, road conditions weren't as bad as people thought.
Yeah, shout out to the street crews, man.
Not too shabby.
Shane said Dodge Street was pristine. So shout out to the men's and women's out there planning, getting it in. All right, listen, our lot. One blade out there and about 4 shovels.
Yeah, you came in making fun of park jobs.
Yeah.
Or park job.
I did. Now, full disclosure, I didn't get a chance to eyeball your vehicle.
Because it was perfect.
But Shane, that little guy, I think he came in with his eyes closed because he is not between the lines.
He's like trying to look above
But
the
I don't
wheel.
know if he can see, and I think he was fairly nervous in getting here. Liquid, do you have thoughts?
I wasn't nervous, but I was here way before anybody was clearing out the lot. It was full of snow when I got here.
Yeah, so you just made it up. You just kind of, did you put chains on
Is
your
that why
little-
there were donuts over here?
Wow. He's thinking Krispy Kremes. I don't think he gets it. Shane, did you put chains on your tires this morning?
I don't think you can put chains on your tires. I think that's illegal.
Is that illegal?
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
I don't
man.
know if
just
I have
thought
enough-
that's what guys do.
And I don't know if I have enough clearance.
Who?
Clearance. Not clearance.
Clearance?
Like the cartoon show for little kids?
I don't know if I have enough clearance
Wait.
for chains.
2 chains?
Time out. We are.
The world.
Are we saying clearance or Clarence?
He said clearance, but it sounds like Clarence.
Clearance.
See?
Are you talking about where you give yourself some room?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
Or
I
when
have
things
enough,
go on
you know-
sale?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
you know when they mark down items at the grocery store?
Between the
Did I hear that wrong?
No, he's saying clearance, but he means clearance.
I said clearance.
Oh, that's
Okay,
clearance.
Okay, thank you.
I don't
All
know
right,
if I
I'm
have
so-
enough clearance.
Oh, between your wheel well and the tire?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, because you did. Or what are you on? Like, Are you on some Twinkie Deuces out there? Are you on some 22s or what are you
Well, I'm not rolling with 22.
some 20s?
Yeah, probably some 20s.
Twin.
Twin 20s.
Oh, here we go. That kind of day.
Great start to the morning. Hey, who was
we
on-
like to have? We like to have fun.
Yeah, we do. Who was on the call yesterday, Shane, on Big Ten Network? Do you know?
I don't know.
No, it's a local guy in town.
I know who it was.
He's so good. That
Kevin Kugler.
I don't understand.
It's a Kugler type of week.
He
Kugler.
does it just to drive me bonkers. That's a big win, man.
Huge win.
Yeah, kind of sets up. I did see. You said that was a good look at the end that the Buckeyes got. Did you hear Coach Hoiberg in the presser? They were supposed to foul. He wanted Breidenbach to foul. He said, didn't quite happen that way. Oh, and God said.
And you know what? Coming out of the dark
Let there be light.
on this show and on the court over at PBA yesterday. But you're right. In a 3-point game like that, it kind of seems like is it a new trend? Do coaches want you to foul when you're up 3? Because in the past, I don't remember a lot of people saying like, hey, foul, put him at the line.
Less than 5 seconds, I'm fouling. Darn near every single time.
Maybe it's just talked about more.
Yeah, well, I think the last 4 or 5 years for sure. But under 5 seconds, I'm fouling.
As you should, because it only takes, 3 seconds to get down the floor.
Yeah, and it all started with the call on Tominaga that really gave
Are you talking about the one near the Buckeyes bench?
Yeah, where they said he was crowding him a little bit, forced him out, which I didn't see it.
Especially because whoever the Buckeye player was already falling out of bounds.
Yeah.
So because he wasn't standing straight up,
Like Alicia
even
Keys.
if Tominaga came over and crowded him, you're still not making a whole lot of contact, if any, at that point.
Right.
Because all you're trying to do is save this ball. They got bailed out.
Yeah, and I just think, when Ohio State went through the drought, whatever it was, 6 and some change, from about the 8-minute mark to about 2 minutes, they didn't make a field goal. Right?
Neither team shot the ball very
and
well.
Nebraska wasn't really scoring, so that game stayed around the 5-point mark. And listen, when Thornton doesn't score until a minute to go, you're thinking it can be your night because they just couldn't get him going.
Especially because he played
1 of 6. We wondered about the wrist. We asked Paul Keels. I don't think he felt great, but Sensabaugh struggled to shoot it well. Now he was 3 of 7 from 3, but he's just 3 of 9 inside the arc. That typically isn't going to get it done for that game, and they found a way to keep Key down relatively to what he's capable of.
Yeah, you need more out of Thornton if you are Ohio State. If you have a guy playing 32 minutes, almost 33 minutes in this basketball game. But kudos to Nebraska's defense. They shut him down. They forced him to take shots that, maybe weren't his bread and butter.
Yeah.
But on the other side,
how about Nebraska shooting the basketball in the second half?
I was going to say 53% in the second half for Nebraska. And I texted you at the end of the first half, and I said, wow, this is a barn burner.
Yeah.
22 to 21.
I was cleaning up the kitchen. I said, I think he's being facetious. a little facetious there.
Maybe a tad bit sarcastic when I said this is a barn burner, which it still was a close game. Don't get me wrong. But both teams shooting 14.3% from 3 and 30% or less from the field in the first half. Not great. But as you said, Nebraska came out in the second half and made some noise. And they did it with people not named Derek Walker.
Yeah.
Derek Walker getting into foul trouble was a problem. And then it was about the 12-minute mark when he picked up his 4th foul. And I watched the play over and over because I was trying to think, what was Derek Walker thinking in this moment? Because you're in foul trouble. You came out of the game once already. Coaching tells you just to let him go, right? Or you know what? Stay vertical. If you get called for the foul, you get called for the foul. But more times than not, we want you in the game. So you just have to avoid making contact. But he came all out SWAT team on that
swatting.
play.
I was swatting.
And I just kind of sat back and thought, a senior doesn't normally make mistakes like that. But what at that point in the game did he think
Just in the moment
that this was the move? But
just in the moment.
coming off the bench, Hoiberg, whoever, an assistant coach said, hey, watch the fouls. Watch it. Like, that's getting drilled into his brain in this game. He's just such a fierce competitor.
Oh, yeah.
He gets caught up in the moment.
And it's interesting, too, because if you would have told me if D-Walk was only going to play, 22 minutes?
Something like that.
And Nebraska was going to win a game at home where they're catching, 6, 7 points? Was it 6? It was something like that. Anyway, they were underdogs at home. And what I felt like was a must-win game is actually must-win for both teams. And by the way, is Ohio State in trouble? That's 5 in a row, and their schedule is not great. Coincidentally, can Nebraska tread water with the schedule they've got coming up?
And without Jawan Gary.
You got Penn State, Northwestern. I think who's after that? Maryland, maybe? So I think it goes Penn State, Northwestern, Maryland, and then the Fighting Illini. Could Nebraska go 2-2? And I think Northwestern is good. Don't get me wrong. I said that in passing a couple days ago. I'll say it again today. Northwestern is a good basketball team, but
it's easy to say, but how much do we believe that Northwestern's a good team?
I think they're a good
right?
team.
It's hard to roll that off the tongue. Like, hey, Northwestern's a good basketball team. You're like, huh?
I think
you didn't watch Big
good.
Ten basketball this year. You wouldn't think Northwestern is a team that should be good.
Well,
and they are.
Apparently, procedure and protocols weren't being watched by Big Ten basketball, because how are you still getting postponements for COVID?
Yeah, that's hard to.
And Northwestern was already. I know the injuries were kind of starting to rack up for them, but they got to pause for COVID. Which
are they the first team this year to?
Yeah, but do you know what I think it is? Did you see after they postponed the game, the Big Ten basically acknowledging that they haven't updated the policy.
Well, it's because Kevin Warren's not there anymore, right?
But in their defense, listen, maybe not in defense. Let me just give you a different perspective. I don't think they thought it was still going to be a thing. Right? So it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It took my kid to the doctor a month ago, had some COVID-like symptoms, didn't even test for it. So I was just like, oh, that's great, because that's what I didn't want it to be.
That is funny, because when I had COVID back in May, I took the at-home test, negative, right?
Ghost Rider, flight pattern is full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I went to urgent care, took another test there, because I felt miserable, had the body aches, could hardly walk, negative. Went to the hospital then 3 or 4 days later, and they tested me, and then I was positive. And it kind of makes me laugh that nobody, for one, thought it right away, because everybody kept saying viral infection this, viral infection that. But then it turned into COVID as I'm on the downward spin of my so-called window to be away from society.
And listen, hear my heart. I think it's a thing. I absolutely think COVID is a thing. I just was surprised that in 2022, 2023, to see that game was postponed. And then you look at the Big Ten schedule for basketball, and it may matter. I don't know. Penn State or Northwestern's 500 in the Big Ten Conference, but for all those teams trying to avoid Wednesday games at the Big Ten Conference tournament, I don't know how are you going. When are you going to make that game up? Well, Nebraska's got to take care of business first. You have a chance to now go get Penn State and put yourself, at 4-5 in the conference, and you start there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't think they're afforded the luxury of looking too far forward. But Penn State, Northwestern, Maryland isn't daunting. Now, you don't love the matchup with Illinois, especially after what they did to you at home, but you can go 2-2.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go as far. 3-1 seems a little too lofty, but You can go 2-2.
And you can absolutely start with Penn State. You can get a W against Penn State.
Although Nebraska kind of has, it's been very interesting with their games against the Nittany Lions, and Penn State needs a win too, as they're one game under 500. But weird night in college basketball too, and I was joking around with you before the show started. Huge wins for both the men's and women's teams, because I felt like Nebraska women, Coach Williams and company, I felt like that was must win is probably too strong, but a big win at Purdue.
Yeah, great transition there. Not easy to recover down 8 heading into the fourth quarter. But the Husker women, they did just that. 23-8 run to close the game. If you look at the box score, those are the numbers you'll see. That's something to brag about. Alexis Markowski had a fantastic game. She was a menace down low. But somebody that really stuck out to me was Maddie Kroll off the bench.
She's something else. We kind of joked about her a couple weeks ago.
We did, because like quietly, coming out of the summit.
I'm unassuming. Of course, I love local, right? But
local kid.
Yeah. Kind of unassuming, just minds her own business, goes about her work. And last night,
she was actually a big member of that Sweet 16 team from South Dakota State. Or South Dakota State, excuse me, South Dakota.
She used to winning. So you know what I like I like the winning gene. I think there's something
to
that be said for people that are used to winning. And they found a way to get it done. So not a bad night for the state school in terms of the hardwood.
Next to that too, Sam Hybe, even though she didn't shoot the ball very well, she stepped up for Jazz Shelley in ways that Jazz Shelley normally plays.
And how about her
makes sense.
Back to being able to change directions? She looked quick. She may be fully recovered from one of the strangest preliminary hey, this is what we think it is, to when you get into surgery, no, this is not what it is.
Right.
Hey, we'll see you out there on the court. You're like, wait, what? She's back a month ago, and then now I think she's starting to kind of round into Hybe type form, which, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. If they want to get to where they want to be at a postseason run in the Big Ten tournament, she's got to be a part of it, because, and we saw last night, and I can't even believe – I can believe it because I watched a lot of crazy things yesterday, but before my BTN Plus runs out, I just wanted to see a little, didn't watch a ton, Iowa at Michigan State last night, and just to see if Caitlin Clark was going to pull off another double-double with assists, not rebounds. Darn near had a triple-double last night. I think she was 29 and 11, but that's 3 in a row with 20 and 10 in terms of assists.
What did you say she was? 29 and 11? She was 26, 9 and 11.
26.
That's pretty good.
26.
That's pretty good. This guy, we were talking yesterday, just how he can just spit numbers off the top of his head. Like, I don't know where you store that information. You see it, and if it has anything to do with analytics from the day before or within the last month,
it just stuck.
It's in there. It's stored.
It's stuck in my head.
It's a flash drive. You plug it in and you see all the folders, and you're just clicking away in your own head. Here, let me go to the Caitlin Clark folder here real fast.
Thank the Lord, because my study skills are subpar. And just sitting down and looking at something or reading and absorbing was very, very hard to do. That's why I was the guy that had to go to class. Because if I go to class and I see it, you tell it to me, I'm probably going to remember. If I'm on my own and it's like, hey, this is what I need you to do over the next 4 days. Well, you're not a lazy guy either, so you wouldn't miss class. I don't know if you're like, hey, I feel bad about missing class, but you're committed. Well, when you commit to something, whether it's sports, whether it's school, there was Sega and PlayStation, so that was hard. We were playing a lot of NHL back then. NHL, what, 45? Oh, sorry. I forgot you went to school in the 90s. My man said 45. Like the old record. But the needle on the record. I see what you did
45,
there.
Really.
Yeah, did you hear that? I caught that. Playing NHL 93, 94. I was still, my buddy and I, 255 wins, my buddy Brian, we would draft like these hockey teams in NHL, and I was still drafting guys like Martin Straka because he was a pen, and on that game he was a very good skater, and you could manipulate the joysticks, right? Just kind of slide thumb corner, sweep by the goalie, little backhander. It was kind of a glitch, kind of like in Double Dribble, which I'm sure you have no idea what that game is, but anyway,
we went through this war.
that was like Bill Walsh 94 on Sega. Like there were a lot of games.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things that could keep you from going to class.
What do you think the oldest game console that I owned was? The oldest one.
I will go with.
Is this when it comes out?
Was Barry providing for you?
My dad did provide for me. Yes.
I will go with
PS3.
No.
Whoa, dude, that was like when I was a senior in high school.
I'll go Nintendo 64.
See, one step earlier, because it was passed on to me. You know what? It was passed on to me. I'll give you a clue.
The Wii?
Mm-mm.
No, the Wii was post.
The Wii was like when I was
early 2000s.
10.
Yeah, the Wii was early 2000s because I remember playing the tennis game in my old house on Curtis, which would have been early 2000s.
VR before VR was a thing.
Right. But hey, how much is that a thing? We use it at the.
You guys have the goggles. What are they called?
I don't know, but our quarterbacks use those, and they're like it's a test pilot deal at the high school, and there's definitely something to visualizing success. What was the console?
The NES.
Oh, okay. Well, that's close.
Yeah, that's why I said you're almost there.
I was
now
close.
We did have like a knockoff Atari.
Atari was the jam. So Coach Huffman and I used to wear. He had everything before everybody else.
Oculus.
It didn't matter what the toy was or the console, but he was the first one to go from Atari. Then there was Sega, and then I think he had Nintendo, because he and I played a lot of track and field and double dribble against one another. NBA Jams. Yeah,
I played NBA Jam.
He's on fire. That game made a comeback. My insurance guy has the arcade version. Looks like an arcade.
The big machine.
NBA Jam.
My favorite game was probably NFL Blitz.
Yeah. You're too young to remember Skateland that was here, but they used to have this football game that was played with it's basically the concept of Golden Tee where you roll the ball.
That's my game.
And there were like these X's and O's. You could kind of curve passes.
That's cool.
Yeah. So tomorrow, well, you won't be here tomorrow, but Monday when you come back, I'm going to rock. I got a Tecmo Bowl t-shirt. It has like the little 4 plays. I got it at the same time I got the Outlaw Josie.
Not shocked.
It's Verzol's fault. We're just, nobody's at Pisons. I'm there in off-brand hours.
Nobody's at Pisons.
Off-brand hours. It's not open. So he and I are solving all the world's problems. He slides me a laptop and he's like,
"Hey, you want to buy a t-shirt?"
He's like, "Hey, such and such website has t-shirts for $6." And I'm like, "Man, I'm not." So I looked at him and I was like, "Here, why don't you get me these?" He goes,
Is this when you spend $2 bills?
Yeah.
On t-shirts.
Yeah. Some turned out to be
and they were $6?
Some turned out to be Chris. I said I got 17 or 18. Some were 13. I got 17 or 18 t-shirts.
I don't remember you telling me that.
Yeah. So
I remember you telling me you spent over $200.
Just like Micah had his sweatshirt on yesterday. It's a John Morant. And he's doing the too little. Yeah, I got a ton.
Micah and Joel won't get along.
Yeah. Micah's
not a John Morant fan.
Micah isn't either. He
he
likes it fits his personality.
He
likes
you're
too
little.
small. Yeah. But he's not a huge jaw guy. I'm telling you, he's all in on the old heads.
A lot coming up on the show today. We'll talk to Brandon Vogel at 7:45. We'll talk to Mark Manning at 8, who DB's very excited to
Shane Bart. That's a Bart Scott moment.
Head wrestling coach at the University of Nebraska. We will talk to Brian Edwards to close the show at 8:45. I'm going to tell you what blows my mind too later on in the show, and DB will probably have something too. But coming up next, do you have any rabbit holes you go down on snow days?
Dude.
Like what are your so-called guilty pleasures on a snow day. We'll get into that.
If you followed my Twitter timeline yesterday, you knew exactly what I was.
And that's where my head's going.
Man.
We'll also set up the next segment with our poll question. So
3 hours later, it's like, what have I been doing?
Right. All that and more next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute.
Here's Greasel. He'll try the three in the corner, and he'll splash that one down.
minutes.
Greasel inside, count it, and the foul. The Buckeyes. Greasel, open look from 3, and he makes the Buckeyes pay from deep.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Greasel, open look from 3, and he makes the Buckeyes pay from deep.
Hey, back with you on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. 590 ESPN, 1480 ESPN Lincoln, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. We are also live on TikTok right now, so hello to our audience over there.
Nope.
What you are DB is scarred from TikTok, probably because he's on it way too much.
Hey, I got a great recipe.
You're going to go down your rabbit hole of TikTok now as we go down the rabbit hole of this segment.
How fire did my dinner look
your
last
chicken
night
looked
that I got from TikTok?
Unbelievable, which is funny because that's going to lead me into my next question here. Because as we alluded to at the end of our first segment, are there rabbit holes that you go down on certain days, like a snow day,
Man,
when you are stuck inside, you don't want to go outside, and then all of a sudden you realize 4 hours have passed, and you actually have to start being productive now? Well, as we talk about rabbit holes, DB starts smelling a few things in his kitchen late at night, and started what when would you say you started on your phone? About like 1:30?
Yeah. So it was probably, I don't know, 1:30 or
1:30?
2, and I had ran a bunch of errands just trying to get stuff done. So I was looking for. This is so dumb. I was
Fantastic.
I was looking for bone-in, skin-on, split chicken breasts.
Because that's what TikTok told you to buy, or that's because you wanted to buy
That's
that?
what I wanted.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, I need bone-in, skin-on, split chicken breast, which I don't know. It's like finding a unicorn if you haven't tried to do it, because now chicken breasts are they're cut, they're trimmed, they're ready to go. The healthy people, they don't have the skin on, whatever. So I was like, I know who's gonna have it. I'm going to Just Good Meats. My guy Sean, best in the business, foolproof, right? So it's kind of snowing. I'm trekking along down 84th, and there's only 2 cars in the parking lot. So I'm like, yes, because that's a place usually when I go in, it turns out to be a lot longer than I really want it to be. So I'm chopping it up with, there's only like 3 or 4 of the guys in there. I mean, they're busting their butt. And I was like, hey, I'm looking for such and such. And so it's like, hey, they're over there. And I'm like high-fiving and stuff, because those are like what I would call my guys. I've known the family for.
Did they give you a standing ovation when you walked in?
Hey, they did.
Like,
Hey, listen, they did do a slow clap.
Oh, no.
So, short story long, I got ready to leave. You know, he's a huge Nebraska fan, and I got ready to leave, and so he's asking me about Coach Rule, and I was like, hey, you know, we got a really good relationship. He's like, nah, and I was like, no, seriously, like, it's kind of uncanny. It just like took off, you know, call, text, whatever. I'm pulling out of Just Good Meats. He's God is my witness. My man comes out with a handful, because they do their own jerky. They have a smoker downstairs. A handful.
You're kidding.
Listen, I'll show you the picture.
Can you bring me some in?
He must have given me 12 bags of vacuum sealed jerky. And he goes, hey, I want you to take this down to Lincoln. Give this to Coach Rule and let him know whatever he needs, we'll take good care of him. Give it to the staff too. So I'm trying to pull out.
I guess I'm demoted.
I'm trying to pull out, and I have I rolled down my window because I thought he was going to say goodbye again. And it's like, he just drops all this jerky in my lap. Bro, I'm not here.
Like 52 card pickup.
Dude, I'm about to show you. You think I'm making this up. So I said, let's just call him. Right. So he's like, nah. I was like, yeah, let's just try to see if he picks up. So I gave him a call and
bothered him in Texas.
Hey, so I didn't know. Right. I wasn't even thinking. So he didn't pick up, and I was like, hey, I'll catch him on the rebound. But then he called me back, and it wasn't as good a story without
him
whatever.
there.
So I said, hey, I know you're at the high school. I'll just send you a text. So, he did whatever. And then I got home. I'm putting away stuff. And somebody on Twitter said something about like broadcasts or calls. So, smart TV, I'm on YouTube. This is like 140 now. And remember, I went to get stuff for dinner. Ended up using chicken thighs, by the way. Didn't even use the split breast because they were like the size of your head, right? So I was like, let me save those for something good. Because I didn't know if the TikTok recipe was going to work. So if I mess up chicken thighs, no big deal. I started with great calls. Al Michaels, Joe and Jack Buck.
And we've gone down a rabbit hole like this. They're all these on this stage before.
These things on Twitter. So I watched the Vin Scully thing again. In a season where the improbable.
Did you watch the Joe Buck, David Freese again?
Oh, yeah. See you tomorrow night. And by the way, I didn't realize at the top when I was so mad about Beltran hosing Ellis at the plate. I forgot he had the game-winning hit, too. He yanked that thing down the right field line. I was like, this son of a gun. Like, I'm really over Carlos Beltran. Reggie Jackson, I mean.
Are they the same guy?
Same stats. Put Carlos in the Hall of Fame. And Carlos had great postseasons. But anyway, not to get on the Yadier Molina talk. So your buddy in St. Louis gets mad at me again because he can't hear. But anyway, 4 hours later, I've gone through all openings that I can find because somebody tweeted out the 49ers Cowboys Open with Pat Summerall doing the narrative for the NFC Championship game. It was the coolest thing ever. So I'm like, man, they need to get back to doing these opens because they're so deep. And you know what I thought of? Why we had the conversation 2 days ago. Why recruits think that there's nothing but cornfields in the state of Nebraska. So I went to some of the Nebraska Opens, and it was Bobby Bowden and T.O. And sure enough, what was the opening scene? Snow in the cornfields with this
bunch of
panoramic view. And it was so good that all I did for the next 3 hours was watch pregame opens. It was and I'm thinking to myself, it's 5-something, and I realized I probably should start dinner, which really
Your old factory.
Which really started why I didn't want to use the split breast and just use thighs because I was an hour behind.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you because you made chicken, and chicken, it takes a while to make chicken.
So the recipe worked for TikTok. Thank the Lord. I didn't make enough, right? The youngins eat the good stuff, and so I ended up having a breakfast sandwich because I didn't make enough. But anyway, 4 hours, man, disappeared. It was so bad. I know we're on TikTok. This is your boy. So I'm so engulfed on what's going on. You know, I have the screen mounted above the fireplace. I caught myself doing this. Dead dog serious. It is not because I can't see. The TV is big enough. I'm just so into it with the goosebumps, listening to these questions that we think media is hard now. Oh, man, they asked. Bob Costas sat Coach Osborne down before the bowl game, and he basically asked him every question about why it was a losing program in some way, shape, or form. Hey, you compare yourself to Marv Levy and the Bills. Do you feel for those guys? Hey, how do you get over the hump? You have these good regular seasons. Some people would say you don't play a tough enough schedule outside of Oklahoma. T.O.'s got his squint game right. He's talking. He's like, yeah, I don't know.
Like a pirate.
He's like, yeah, I don't know who those people are, but we just play the hand that we're just classic vintage T.O. And I'm telling you, 4 hours. And I was like, I probably ought to be productive. It was nuts. I watched every old – dude, did you see my Twitter timeline? It's all old interviews. It's so old. The pixels Doesn't matter what kind of TV you have, it still looks like trash.
Did you hit any Keith Jackson?
No, you know, I should.
Because he had that great intro for Nebraska.
Yeah, old Wistrom, when he walks through
Yeah.
the door, it
Yep.
creaks. Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Did you start with big game highlights and then go to opens, or did you start with opens and then mix in
Went
big game highlights?
highlights, then went to opens.
Did you watch the Jason Lezak call?
No.
That's my favorite.
So, and we, it's funny. We were talking about like Paul Allen the other day after the Minnesota Vikings loss, and I'm like, Brock, it's changed. Like, commentating has changed.
Yeah.
Like, what'd you do?
So, well, I have 43 seconds to get my point
Yeah.
out now.
All right, listen, it's kind of embarrassing.
No, so what I did was I laid on my couch, and
You just moved too.
I go with variety. Yeah, I just moved, and I started with Pawn Stars because I'm a big kind of like a history guy, and so I like the items that they bring in. Then I started watching Seinfeld clips. Okay. Then I watched a different Pawn Stars that has a little more animosity than the
Yeah,
real
because those
Pawn
guys
Stars.
fell out, right?
Yeah, because I just watched kind of the rerun clips. And then I watched a bunch of clips about the NFL draft in the order that the Bears could fall.
And I text you. I told you I saw your boy Devin Hester because that was
Uh-huh.
on one of the great calls. I forgot that opened the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts.
He was silly.
We'll get into more of that maybe later on in the show, but we have Brandon Vogel next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, we are back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. He's Damon Benning. I'm Andrew Rogers. We're live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. DB just put a D in my last name whenever he tried to send me a tweet.
I have to delete that, which is a no-no for me.
It is a trigger for me to get that D in the last name because I am not Aaron Rodgers, although I wish I had his salary. I wish I had his paycheck.
I typically don't believe in deleting tweets, but when I'm wrong, when I tweet the wrong person, that's a problem.
You feel for that.
Yeah. Sheila E., you won't remember that, but she used to sing a song called I Feel For You. Isn't it always about TV?
It's always about music for you.
Oh, that's a good point. Keeps it fresh.
We'll speak to Brandon Vogel once we get a hold of him. He's the managing editor for Hail Varsity, and lots to discuss on that front. But going back to our previous point, DB, not only did I go down all of those rabbit holes, but I also played some Fortnite last night, and I was like, I gotta hit up Caleb.
Caleb, he said he would roll you.
We're on the same team. We're not playing one-on-one.
He doesn't always love. Is it duo? What is
duos and solos and trios and squads?
Squads. So he and his little brother are into playing UFC too. So they go in there and they fight with each other. And of course, Mike is the ultra competitive, but they love some Fortnite. I don't get it.
It's the game of my generation.
So one time, I'm old, right? Obviously. Micah came upstairs talking about, did I see the new skins? And I almost had a heart attack. I'm like, see the new what? Skins, Dad. And immediately my mind is like, oh, wait, this isn't the 90s. Like, what do you mean when you say? I'm like, no, seriously, I almost lost my mind. Like, just in a true old man dad moment. And he's like, they had all the dances and the new skins. And I'm like, oh, hey, knock yourself out. Keep playing, son, because I certainly thought it was something different. I was like, I gotta kind of get with the times.
Yeah. Well, every character of mine's a football player. I have one from all 32 teams.
So do you know what they do now? They have, and I can't remember who the ringleader is, but one of the guys on the team has cracked the code to update all the college football rosters on the fly. It takes a little bit of time. Like, they all drop like 5 PlayStation consoles off at his house, and he like jerry rigs them all at once. Then they all got him back. So they're like playing college football now with the current rosters too. I don't know who did it, but I mean, goodness.
I'm all about those uploads, and let's upload Brandon Vogel in now. He's via StreamYard, and he's got a, one of the best backdrops.
I told you
of any guest.
All those books,
books
for his big brain.
Big brain move. Hey, Vogel. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Big folks, how are you, my guy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Hey, Vogel, our last segment was talking about going down rabbit holes on a snow day. Do you have any guilty pleasures of your own that you just kind of sit down and all of a sudden 4 hours later, you're like, I should start being productive?
Well, thankfully, I think a lot of my rabbit holes are just digging into college football. So technically that counts as work, I think.
Yep.
Don't ask anybody. I'm just proceeding under that's okay. So, I mean, once we get a full season of data, honestly, like, I'm already starting yearbook prep for opponent previews, Big Ten previews, although it's harder now because of the rosters change so much. Speaking of NCAA football and roster uploads, if I could just get reliable roster uploads, if somebody could finalize these things, because doing it for print, it's become a lot messier, but that's kind of it. I'm afraid to say I don't have a ton of hobbies.
You know what you need to do? You need to find Chris Brown, former Nebraska kicker Chris Brown. His son, Colby, is like the roster college football guru. That's the guy that you need to grab. Let me ask you something, B. Vogues, because you mentioned something that I want to stay right where we're at with rabbit holes. Kind of, I know you're an old soul, right? And I'm going down this rabbit hole yesterday of pregame opens and show opens, and I stumbled across, and remember, because I'm playing, so I don't know any of this real time. I don't see halftime interviews. I don't see pregame interviews. I don't see any of that. And Bob Costas had a sit down with Coach Osborne before we played Miami. And some of the questions, like as a player, would have made me upset. Yesterday, when I'm watching this for the first time, mind you, in 2023, I'm like, wow, those were big boy questions. I appreciate how a coach handled that, right? The losing, the Marv Levy, the can't win the big game. He questioned the schedule, the win at all costs. Like, it was all out there, right? Are we misremembering or revisionist history that media is tougher on coaches now than they were in the yesteryear?
It might be a little bit misremembering. It also might be, you think about the number of people at a Nebraska football practice now. And I wasn't around in the 90s to know what it was like. I mean, there's always been intense interest in Nebraska football. I don't want to say that there hasn't, but like just the number of people who had access to potentially ask tough questions is greater now, and I think that contributes to it a little bit. But no, I mean it's always been tough. With Osborne, it's interesting. I kind of vaguely remember that open to that game. I haven't watched it in a while.
It's unbelievable.
But I was listening to some stuff about just kind of the angst with some Ohio State fans, which I think the playoff helped with that, but around Ryan Day. And it made me think of Osborne in those early years after he took over for Devaney, couldn't get past Oklahoma. And I think that might be a little bit of where Ohio State's at right now. But then you had this other one with Osborne, the kind of the bowl losing streak leading up to that Florida State game, didn't get that one quite. And then finally over the hump against Miami. So yeah, those are two periods separated by more than a decade where, yeah, there was some real kind of angst around Tom Osborne.
Hey, speaking of coaches, we haven't even gotten into this all too much on this show yet, so I'll get your thoughts here. Surprise or expected in Jim Harbaugh returning to Michigan? Like, do you think the season Michigan had this year and the amount of skill players they have coming back next year really influenced him to stay and play for a natty?
No, I mean, and I don't know. I have to think in his meetings with the NFL teams, maybe he didn't hear what he wanted to hear. Maybe the interest that we assume is there isn't quite as high as you might expect, because Michigan's in a really interesting spot to me too, because you had great kind of almost out of nowhere 2021 year. And then you lose some really, really good players, particularly on defense. You go into this 2022 season with two quarterbacks potentially, and you don't miss a beat. That's two really great chances and you hammer Ohio State both times. That's probably the biggest deal. Two really great chances to kind of get over a hump. And then you have the NFL flirtation again. And you start to wonder, well, is that window closed for Michigan? I think you have to wonder, even with Hurrdat coming back, not that it's close, like they're going to be really good again, but it's hard. It's hard to go 12-0. It's hard to go 13-0. And it's that thing, and it kind of ties in with Day, kind of ties in with Osborne in that 90 stretch to me of like, it's really hard as a fan base. You get accustomed to a certain level of success. You got to stay in the hunt, but it's hard to always just be in the hunt and never quite make, bag the big game at the end of it.
Hey, before we let you out of here, something or nothing. It's easy for me, like when I see multiple coaches 40 miles away at a school, right? Oh, that's one thing. But how about the relentless pursuit of excellence with this staff, whether it's Raiola, we've seen them double dip, tag team. Satterfield was now in Arizona. How much can we glean without drinking too much Kool-Aid I'm not even a Kool-Aid guy, that this staff almost doesn't want to ever seem to take no or maybe for an answer.
Yeah, I think it's encouraging. I think, it's hard. Everything for me is kind of tempered with, coaching transition. Everything feels new. It's hard to go back and remember, like, what was this point like exactly in 2015 or
Right.
2018? So what truly is different, or does it just feel different? But I will say, hearing Coach Rule talk a couple of times now and hearing some of those assistants to this point, they all talk about, you're going to have to work on the recruiting trail. And I would say that I've seen that. I think I've seen the intense focus on, like, hey, the only way to do this is to outwork people. And it's hard because everybody knows that and is working really hard on it. So seeing some of these return visits, I mean, we'll see what happens with Raiola. But boy, would that be a pretty big jump start to a new regime, landing a player of that caliber. I mean, it's just not only in terms of his ability, but what it signals nationally, be a pretty big get for Nebraska, which I guess we already know that. That's not any news there.
He's Brandon Vogel, managing editor for Hail Varsity. B. Vogues, thanks so much, man. We'll talk again next week.
Thanks, guys. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, B.
And he mentioned the yearbook. And if you would like to get signed up for Hail Varsity, use that promo code AR for a monthly subscription, DB for a yearly subscription. And to get that yearbook, all you have to do is be a member of HailVarsity.com. And you'll, if you use the promo code, you get deals, you get perks, and everything's better when you're working with us.
Hey, I know Weiss is on suspension in Ann Arbor amid the computer probe that the NCAA's got going on. Don't you think that may sway Harbaugh? That appears to be something more than nothing. I don't know. Maybe he knows something we don't.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Makes you think. Hey, let's change gears. We'll talk to Mark Manning, wrestling coach at the University of Nebraska, next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Hey, top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. 590 ESPN Omaha, 1480 ESPN Lincoln, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. Thank you for joining us for the second hour of the show. And we kick it all off with the head wrestling coach at the University of Nebraska. Mark Manning joins the show. Mark, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Andrew. Thanks for having us on.
Coach, how are you, man? It is good to talk to you. I hope you're off to having a good start with the new year. I know your wrestling team is. How are you?
Hey, doing great, Damon. Thanks.
By the way, you look fantastic. I don't know if you did it overnight, but I love the hair, right? It's like this silver, super fit. You've been ultra intense, man. You look great.
Well, thanks, Damon. Appreciate it. As long as I don't, as long as I don't grow a mullet, I'll be okay.
Hey, Coach, the team grabbed its fifth consecutive dual victory against Northwestern, and in the personal accolade column, you grabbed your 299th victory. Knowing you're not one to put yourself ahead of your team, but for once here, think about you for a moment. What will 300 mean, especially if you can get it against Iowa?
Man, I really don't think too much about that. Getting the victory Friday night will be pretty sweet, though. We all know Iowa wrestling is their historic run of NCAA titles and Dane Gable and the legacy, and there's a lot there, but it really just comes down to a wrestling match on Friday night.
Coach, I've followed you forever. Wherever you go, of Nebraska wrestling. One of the things, and maybe it's just me because I'm old. You know what I love? Like, it seems like you've adjusted to your team's personality. You're usually so measured and kind of buttoned up and reserved.
Yep.
You guys are aggressive, energetic. The wrestling style is. Man, it's athletic, and it seems like you've embraced it. Is that intentional?
Very much so. I think,
That's awesome.
Just, you adjust with the type of guys you get on your team and the type of guys you recruit. And, we've got some dynamic guys. Really it starts with Ridge Lovett.
Yeah.
Ridge was, obviously redshirted right now, but Ridge is a catalyst on our team the last couple of years. And so that's where it started. Then you have guys like Peyton Robb, who's kind of a quiet killer.
He seems like a mean son of a gun.
nicest guy in the world.
Coach,
but he's a hammer on the mat, and he's a professional. He's great at his craft. He wants to be elite. He wants to wrestle on the world and Olympic level after college. And so he's got his mind focused on continue to raise his level of wrestling and raise his level of competitiveness.
Hey, Coach, you brought up Ridge. I know you're off to a fantastic start. There has to be some conversation about the red shirt and where you're at with it in terms of development. What are the talks like with Ridge?
None really. Actually, right now, Ridge Lovett is in Nice, France. Yeah, you got that right, France. He's wrestling an international tournament this weekend, and we're just trying to help him develop. Continue to develop. We want Ridge Lovett to be a 2-time national champion. That's tough to do, but he's got a lot in front of him, and we're just trying to help him develop as a wrestler.
Coach, chasing perfection is something I've always gauged from at least high school wrestlers. And taking the next step, it kind of follows you. It's a mentality, it's a mindset, but it may not always be in the record column, but on the mat, in every move, every change of direction, you're always chasing perfection in some way, shape, or form. This season is different so far, though, as you have, well, actually two that are perfect right now in the record column. Tell me about Peyton. You mentioned Peyton already, and Mikey, and how you've seen them grow as athletes, wrestlers, and men.
Yeah, wrestling is the same as any other sport. Guys are going to develop when they have a great culture around them. They have people that love and support them, and both Mikey and Peyton are smart young men. They want to wrestle on. They have the desire to wrestle on the next level, and so it's all about challenge them, but also just loving them up, man. You gotta have a great environment around that kids can develop and grow. It's an old metaphor, but it's just like a seed. You plant some seeds and they're going to grow, and you got to continue to water it. And that's what we try to do. And different guys are at different stages in their life, and they're not always going to bloom as a freshman. They're not always going to bloom as a redshirt freshman. It takes small steps. And so, but when you create that environment, you create that culture, kids are going to grow and kids are going to reach their potential.
Coach, I got to take advantage of your I'm going to give you a couple of macro, the 30,000 foot view, just because I know how you love the sport and you're watching its growth. Yeah. A lot of conversation about robo-umps in baseball, or college basketball officials working too many games, or what's going on in the NFL with the pipeline. I was talking to Ryan Terry at Metros the other day, and we're just seeing these, and obviously Tyson is a monster, and I said, it's interesting. Yeah, I saw two bang calls in the same night that determined matches. One with Lenny, the other was in Ann Arbor with Michigan with the hand touch to the mat. It's it's bang, and it's a tough call. Yeah. There seems to be some consistency, but I actually think wrestling may be ahead of the game in terms of replay and getting it right more than wrong, especially in a certain time frame. It's probably different as a coach, but how difficult is it now to officiate wrestling with as big, strong, and powerful as these wrestlers are now, where you see things you didn't see 20 years ago?
No, you're right, Damon. These guys are really good athletes. It's funny. I had one of my older brothers come down, him and his wife, last weekend and watch both matches. And he's like, wow, the athleticism of these guys and how they move, it's not how people moved 25, 30 years ago. And I think that's why popularity of wrestling in the Big Ten is third in viewership. People have recognized, man, this is a street fight with rules, and people like UFC, but this is not to the death. This is wrestling, and people are enjoying it because the athleticism, the action, the competitiveness, it's fun to watch. And you hit it on the head. it's tough as an official. I'm not always crazy about those zebras, but they have a tough job to do, and it's tough to those replays are very, very important. You're right, Damon.
Coach, go ahead.
You got it. No, go
Coach,
ahead.
I was going to ask, speaking of tough jobs, being the earliest leg is hard enough, but add in coming back from an injury to accomplish what he's been able to accomplish this season is nothing less than impressive. How important is Liam Cronin to this team?
Big time. Liam is, he's a sixth-year guy. He's had a tough road, and he's just showing resilience. And he's really bought into just focusing on staying in the present. That word's always used, but it is. It's just he's just dialed in. We knew he's really developed his wrestling skills, and he's a really athletic kid. But now he understands, what, I deserve to be there. And that's powerful when your mind can go there and you keep telling yourself, hey, I'm as good as that guy. So he's just going out there, putting his foot on the line with a purpose.
Coach, it's unfolding before my eyes right at the high school that I coach with the Piper Zadiskas, the Rossiters, the Zoe Barber,
Yeah.
Macy Barber. I'm watching, and we talked about this a couple of years ago when it was just getting going. What have you seen with the growth of the women's game in wrestling? Because it's at a pretty high level. I don't know if everybody else is like Nebraska, but I'm seeing some quality women's wrestling going on at the high school level.
Yeah, really it's really evolved from the international style at USA Wrestling. I remember, 12 years ago when I started traveling the world with Jordan, the women were, started having tournaments, big international tournaments. And I'm like, wow, these girls can really wrestle. And I think, a lot of young women have got great role models from the women, Helen Maracas, and all these girls have done well on the international level. And so it's just rubbed down. And these young girls have great interest in wrestling, whether their dad wrestled or their high school coach is really a great influence on them or whatever. They get them out for wrestling, and they develop the skills, and they enjoy it.
Coach, you talk about just development as a whole, right? And when you talk development, it comes back to understanding that it's a marathon and not a sprint in most cases. How does this team, your team in particular, avoid being a results-only driven team? And what I mean by that is like identifying your ranking versus a process-driven team.
Great question, Andrew. Well, right now, we don't feel the rankings and the so-called experts give us much love,
much
of a chance. We won the Las Vegas tournament in early December. The who's of who was there.
Yeah.
Michigan, Ohio State,
Yeah.
Cornell, Virginia Tech, NC State. Everyone was there. Arizona State. We whipped them all, but our ranking didn't really move. So really, we carry a little chip on our shoulder right now because some of our guys, even, guys like Brock Hardy wasn't getting much love early in the season. Now, they're still kind of doubting him. So we kind of use that as motivation. We kind of, we like that chip on the shoulder.
Coach, I talked about evolution. I got to sneak in a couple quick things here, and I appreciate your time as we're talking to the head mat boss down at University of Nebraska, Mark Manning. I don't get you a ton, Coach, so I got to get a couple of things in here.
Oh, I love it, Damon. I wish we got to see each other more often. Yeah.
So it was going to be Friday, and I didn't want to bother you, but I'm watching some of your guys because I think you're always trying to get better, and people talk about fitness and Nebraska over time when it comes time to NCAAs and the Big Ten tournament. And I'm watching some of the body types. changed right before my eyes. Guys like Antrell Taylor and just the fitness level and how aggressive you guys could be. Was that intentional? So that program can take the next step in terms of being complete wrestlers? Because I know you're explosive.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I think a lot of our guys have, just really embraced that. They take a personal, agenda, and they have a personal agenda about really developing their body. They know they're good athletes, and it's just next level thinking for them. A guy like Antrell Taylor is going to be really good. Don't want to talk him up too much right now.
He looks fantastic. His body type, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that rubs off because you have a great guy in Peyton Robb showing him the ropes, and that's who his workout partner is every day.
Yeesh.
And so iron sharpens iron. You got it right there. And then, Antrell's going with Rich Lovett, so you either die or get better.
Let me get you out of here on this, because Friday all the talk was, they got a quarterback in the house with the twin. He's got some young developing guys in his own household. I gotta ask, because I go through this sometimes. The splitting of the attention and time overseeing your other kids versus the studs you've got under your own roof, man. Are you getting excited about the high school experience for the boys?
Yeah, it is, Damon. It's great. My 8th grader is actually, I'm picking him up this afternoon. He's going to Iowa City. I took Ryan and Will to the duel a couple of years ago, and it was an eye-opening experience. For Husker fans that want to tune into something on Friday night, 15,000 fans at Carver Hawkeye is like nothing else. I mean, I've been to a lot of big football games, obviously Memorial Stadium, but 15,000 feels like 150,000.
Coach, I agree. I said wrestling on that campus is the best spectacle. I don't think that it has a peer.
Yeah, it's something. It's going to be really good. So the boys really like that. Obviously, Ryan is wrestling right now, and so he's got a meet in Lexington on Saturday. But Will's going over with me. But both of them, they love football, Damon, like your son, and they want to be next level. I'm not sure if they'll be there, but they really work at it. It's fun to work different stuff in the evenings with them and stuff like that. But they really love it. Ryan really wants to be a great quarterback. We'll see if he is, and it take it day by day. But we spend some time up at the Hawks Center at different weekends. So
that is awesome.
Getting some throws in. So it's a lot of fun.
Coach, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. Good luck at Iowa on Friday.
Best wishes, Coach.
You bet. Thanks, Damon. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having us on. Go Huskers.
Hey, absolutely. Go Huskers.
He's a gem.
At Coach_Manning on Twitter. Great follow. Husker Wrestling's a great follow. There's a lot of storylines there. Sometimes we don't talk about it enough, but they are one of the more special programs in the entire state.
And he's kind of become, it's what you kind of aspire to be, right? You want to be your own benchmark. And it's such a niche sport, but it's growing. I mean, thank goodness for BTN and BTN Plus, because they are really showcasing wrestling. They had Wrestling in 60 yesterday, or Wrestling Big Ten Stories, back-to-back time slots last night, which I love, right? But he is one of those guys where around the state, people talk about recruiting and conditioning and what they need to do to next level. And quietly, he has been a very, very consistent program. People want to see strides in Big Ten championships and nationals. And it's just one of those sports, man, where on any given night, you breathe at the wrong time, you relax at the wrong second, and it's over. that program doesn't get near enough credit for what his staff, how they've divvied up the recruiting, the development of the youth programs. He is, and by the way, he was selling his son short. He can flat out spin it. I'm telling you. Hopefully they could go like the Danny Noonan route where you got a hooper and a football player when you got twins and somebody wrestles and somebody plays football. You don't always have to have that comp.
Right.
But, man, he's got something brewing in Lincoln.
So you mentioned recruiting and a great transition here as we kind of wrap up this segment before we get into a segment that I've been really interested to gauge your thoughts on. It's something that's been blowing my mind as of late. But we talked about Jim Harbaugh at the back end of the segment with Brandon Vogel. And during the break, I was trying to come up with the coach that also had something to say in regards to tampering in college football and violating certain rules. And
because we don't know what Michigan's charges are, right? But if it's improper contact,
they're insinuating that it's, contacting recruits when you shouldn't be. And it was Jeff Traylor at UTSA who I was thinking of. And I don't know if you remember seeing it, but he had a heyday on Twitter. Gosh, when was this? This would have been December.
It was before Christmas.
Yeah, right before Christmas. And he was talking about not like anything like too crazy, but using NIL to persuade some of his players. But they were, and that's all fine, right? It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. And Jeff Traylor got hurt here because those two players weren't questioning entering the transfer portal. Yeah. And that's what he got mad about. And so now you're starting to see
Coach Huff at Marshall calls out Deion Sanders.
Correct. Yeah. There's a lot of tampering accusations out there.
How about A&M? Jimbo Fisher's meltdown.
Which is funny because he's he's such an easy shell to crack because this dude is a guy that got complained about by Nick Saban for having the best recruiting class, this, that, and the other, have a horrible season.
Again,
and then can come back to, well, it's ridiculous how things are going down right now. So and he loves himself some Jimbo Fisher.
But I'm going to defend him for a second, Drew Down. Just because he always has been doesn't mean this time he's wrong. Right. So I try to I'm weird, right?
Take it with a grain of salt.
I take it with a grain of salt, and I try to listen to what's being said to see if he has a valid case. And listen, whether you like or love Jimbo Fisher, whether you think he maximizes or develops talents, that doesn't mean everything he says isn't true. Mm-hmm. And I do think tampering is an issue.
It is. It has been for a while.
Okay, so I asked about a particular player. Not even going to bring him up. He is a Big Ten conference player, played at one of the top 3 schools in the Big Ten. The day of, he hits the portal. Mm-hmm. I asked one of the coaches in the Big Ten conference, I sent him a text and I said, hey, there's a connection to here, and here. You may want to take a look at exploring that angle for your end. I waited about 3 or 4 days. He didn't text, he called. Coach called me back. Coach says, I think he already has his destination picked, but we'll see. It's worth investigating. Appreciate the nugget. And in my head, I'm like, well, he just hit the portal on
whatever day.
Blank day.
Right. Whatever day.
You took 2.5 days to get back to me and said that he already has his destination picked. Are we to believe
you don't just
that nobody had contacted him ahead of time, or that he, the student athlete or the family himself, hadn't put that out there? Like, it's going to happen.
You don't just settle down in 2 days.
Just don't text or DM, right? And apparently, if you're in Michigan, use your computer. Dude, I think they were at his home. They raided Weiss's home.
But I thought he did it.
Do you call that a raid?
I thought he did that, though, at like a student computer lab.
No, they also went to his home.
So they went both.
Yeah.
That is a raid.
It's not like
it's not like
they come through the
windows.
It's not like Biden or anything, leaving documents in the closet. But I mean, wait.
Trump, you mean?
Hey, stick to sports.
Yes, please.
Sorry. Hey, no offense, Joe. Clean up the.
I don't know who
Clean
we're
up
talking about.
the
Hey, let me tell you what blows
ducks.
my mind next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Key, 2 seconds. McNeil, a look to tie. No! The Huskers knock off the Buckeyes at home.
Back on Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Before I tell you what blows my mind, I'd like to talk to you about Dingman's. Dingman's Collision Center is your one-stop shop for all of your car needs. There it is, the big bell guy over there. And on a day like today, you may need Dingman's. The roads are pretty slick.
And
Trust me, I can ring a bell.
Hey,
you can ring my bell.
Shane is single now. Hey, so listen, Shane, I saw 4 vehicles on the way here, and I only went. It only takes me
Beat up
6 minutes
like
to get here.
hitting
Yeah.
what? Each other? A pole?
No, individual. It was slick because of the little freezing stuff that's under
Right.
the snow. Because Shane, you'd know this. I think we only got 2.5 inches.
Nah, I don't know anything about 2.5.
That's what Epley reported. But what?
Shane.
He's Shane's a wild boy. But it's what's underneath.
It is what's underneath that counts.
Oh, here we go. You and Shane got jokey jokes this morning. Is it all about the heart?
It's
what's
what's
inside.
inside that matters.
Yeah.
And you know what? Our heart is to Dingman's in this case because they've been in the business for over 25 years. They're family run, locally owned. They work on all makes and models. So whatever car DB saw this morning broken down or hit or turned sideways, they work on it.
2 for sure. One was a little Kia sedan. The other was like maybe an Odyssey. And I don't know what the other 2 were because they were in the little ravine thing.
Like the putter?
Yep. Just like the Odyssey putter. You got it.
What's wrong with this dude?
Why do you, out of nowhere, come up with the putter reference, but you're not like a huge sports guy? I guess you are kind of a golf guy.
Yeah. So he bought a putter from somebody in the building at our other work. And it was in studio, and I was watching him use it.
Just tap it in.
Shane looked like he has a nice stroke.
Give it a little taparoo.
You'd probably, like, if we got a foursome, Andrew, you'd be the guy off the tee. I can streak it. I would be the spectator.
You'll be the guy drinking in the cart.
I'll be the driver. I'll hand you your club. Right? That's what you think I do
my
anyway,
caddy.
right? Yeah. And Shane looks like he could be the putter. Here, I'll hold the door for you.
Oh, and as we, that is
Shane, you want to be all-time putter?
All-time putter?
Yeah.
What the heck is all-time putter?
It's like an all-time quarterback, except you just are the putt guy.
I've never been offered the all-time quarterback position.
Well, I saw you throw in the parking lot, I know.
Ever.
Yeah, it stands to reason. We like to throw the ball more than 9 yards down the field at a time.
Makes sense.
You're not a short throw guy like Tom Brady?
Can you imagine Shane even trying to see? There'd be no
He's
throwing
Bryce
lanes.
Young in the draft.
Hey, Shane, by the way, I was telling some folks on social media that you park about 17 feet away from the curb, and they came to your defense because they said they understand that you probably can't see. Are you still using the phone book or Zoe's booster seat?
They haven't made a phone book for like 10 years.
So can I have her booster seat back then?
No.
Can you imagine using a booster seat in the driver's seat?
Do you see how far away he parks from the curb, though?
Mm-hmm. I do. All right, let's wrap. Let's go back to Dingman's here for a second as we get off track. They have 4 locations throughout the metro. If you're looking for the standalone mechanical shop, that's at 120th and Maple. Go to dingmans.com for all of your car needs. Now let me tell you what blows my mind, DB.
This ought to be good.
Because when I saw the news come out a couple of days ago that the Chargers parted ways with offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi and quarterbacks coach, passing game coordinator Shane Day. Speaking of Shane, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I could believe the Joe Lombardi going bye-bye. I could believe
says the guy that was trying to validate Cliff Kingsbury, but go ahead.
I could believe Joe. I can't believe Shane. So here's why. So the Chargers threw on 65% of plays this season. That only trailed the Bucs. Justin Herbert's stats this year, he had a 68.2% completion percentage. That's up 3 points from last season and has kept getting better every year in Herbert's career. His touchdown numbers were down. But remember,
he was 25 to 10.
25 to 10. But remember, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were out most of the year. So Justin Herbert didn't have a lot of his primary options to throw to.
So Mike Williams wasn't playing in meaningless garbage time?
maybe one time.
Oh, that time right before the playoffs?
Maybe one time. Mike Williams missed 6 games this year, including that playoff game. Keenan Allen missed 8 games this season. Shane Day has done a great job with Justin Herbert. This isn't a Shane Day fault. So I don't know why he was canned. I don't get that. Blew my mind. And that Brandon Staley would stay, a defensive-minded head coach, mind you, would stay when you are on the front end of your young quarterback's prime and you still aren't going to make strides to help him out.
Are you mad?
I don't know if I'm mad. I'm just kind of confused.
Shane, do you think he's mad?
I don't get it. Make it make sense. Why keep Staley and not keep Day?
It doesn't make any sense.
If you keep Staley, that's fine. The players, they confided in him in a lot of cases, and they stood by him even after that 27-point loss. If it's for the players, so be it. But I don't understand why Shane Day got canned. I just don't get that.
Because I think, listen, I'm with you. I'm not up in arms because I'm still looking at you sideways because you made a case for Cliff Kingsbury. You made a case for Cliff Kingsbury.
I did. I'll stand by that case.
Don't die on that hill.
I'll stand by it. He got better every single year
Shane,
except for this year.
Who is that? Yeah, his second half of his seasons are terrible.
Yeah,
I'll stand by you.
Didn't have D-Hop this year.
It was Pat Benatar. Somebody. It's one of those.
A lot of
girls.
injuries.
Who is it? Google. I'll stand by you.
I'll stand by.
Do you know what song I'm talking about?
But I'll stand by my man.
How about how yesterday?
The Pretenders.
Thank you. How about how yesterday we sang the right song by the wrong guy?
Yeah, that blows your mind.
Yeah. So the difference between James Blount
and Daniel Powder
are very minimal. Which is why I was glad Husker Follower came to our defense. Like, hey, in our defense, right? They're like those little bubblegum boy crooners. They were releasing songs every 2 days. So there are times I want to wring that little. I just want to wring that little dude's neck. But anyway, the Pretenders, right? I don't understand messing up young quarterbacks that are supposed to have promise. Unless, Drew Down, your guy, Justin Herbert, was like, we need to move in a different direction.
Which could have been the case.
Right? Because that's the only thing that's the only
thing that makes sense.
Right? Unless it's just, he was getting better in spite of not loving the relationship.
But a 27-point loss is going to linger going into next season. That's going to be hard to overcome. Now you involve coaching change. You involve a lot of new faces in the mix, somebody that has to work with Herbert like right away and, continue to help him grow in his career.
Let me get this right. So we're going to bat for Justin Herbert, right? But you aren't going to be all in on the development of Fields and Eberflus for the team that you cheer for without some sort of running it back? I think I came around
throughout the year.
Did you?
Yeah. I'm on that team. What are you making a case for?
Well, when did that happen? Because when I told you that he acted like he was some sort of competent, you're like, well, I don't know about that.
Dude, week 7, I know we've had this conversation, and at least during week 7, I'm like, they finally figured out how to use him because I was hard on Eberflus.
So you don't think that you have to throw the ball at some point to be able to complete passes?
You will, because he's got right now the longevity of a running back. I've been saying that. he's only going to last in the league
So
for like
how
7
are you
years.
validating what they're not doing in Chicago, but you're up in arms over making a move in the left coast state? How has that happened?
It's fine, DB. We figured out JF can run the football,
Hey, do
and
that
now we
again.
got to figure out.
Semadonna, it's fine. It's fine.
Now we got to
DB.
figure out in the offseason how to throw it.
All right. Well, who are you gonna throw it to?
Yeah.
Let's
Well,
start
wait
there.
till D-Hop ends up in Chicago. You just
Is
wait.
that your power move?
Just wait. That's it. And then we're going to keep. How much cap space do they have? They have more than 100 million now. Did you see that? It started at 100 million. Now it's like 110, 115. I don't know.
We'll be fine, DB.
We'll be fine, DB.
We'll relax. All right, I will.
Hey, you know what? Let's get some plays next. Let's talk to Brian Edwards. Sound good?
Sounds good. Let's make some money.
He's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
This is my type of segment right here. Talking to Brian Edwards here in a moment. It's Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. As we wind down the show from Hail Varsity Club, we appreciate you joining us all the way through. But remember, if you can't catch any more of your favorite two favorite morning show hosts in town, you go to your favorite podcast app and check out Morning Dump, because that's coming up next. But now it's time for Brian Edwards. Vegas B. Edwards on Twitter, majorwager.com, BrianEdwardsSports.com. Brian, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. What's happening?
B, good morning, man. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Nebrasketball hooked me up with another under last night. It might have got hairy if that buzzer beater had not gone in and out and potentially forced overtime, but it worked.
Hey, was Brian Edwards saying foul? There's less than 4 seconds foul. Don't let him get the 3 off. Because Coach Hoiberg said that they were trying to foul. They wanted Breidenbach to foul. He said it just didn't work out. Hey, B, let me ask you something real quick before we get into the plays. Did you and I both see that right, that John Jones opened as a dog?
What? Wait, say that. Who opened as a dog?
John Bones Jones.
Oh, right. Yes, I did see that.
Did you not think that was a typo?
Yeah, so I wrote a story about that on Monday, and I did see Gone open minus 150 or minus 160, but it only lasted a couple hours, and I don't think you or I had our eyes on it in those first few hours.
No, I'm like, wait a minute. How is he? I get it. It seems like a 55-year layoff, but I don't know if I would ever make that guy a dog, especially if he's motivated.
No, I'm absolutely with you, and I haven't looked at it in like 48 hours, but I'm pulling it up now, see if it's still Pick'em. And well, looks like Jones is minus 120 at DraftKings and Caesars.
That's crazy.
Minus 125 at Bet River.
People were hammering him.
Well, and it's still, I mean, that will be the closest odds he will ever probably fight in, right? John Jones as a Pick'em is startling, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to go back to his first couple of fights. Looks like his first fight, I haven't even heard of the guy. He was plus 190. And against Bonner, he was plus 140. But ever since then, he's been astronomical favorite, with the exception of Cormier's first fight, minus 170. And he was only minus 185 to Hamill when he got DQ'd from the elbows.
Brian, let's talk football now. We'll talk divisional round football, and we'll start with the Philadelphia Eagles, because, you know, a lot of people are still wondering, is Jalen Hurts ready? Because when he played in Week 18, they said, you know, it may not have been the best idea, but they did end up with the bye. But you're still on the Eagles. You're still a believer in that team. Why is that?
Well, I don't know that I like them minus 7.5, but I am still a believer in the team, and I think the way to approach Saturday, I think the lines are both very good, but when I do teasers in the NFL, it's home favorites between 6 and 8.5, and I think Philly and KC are perfect teaser teams this week, so I'm just going to go with Philadelphia knocking them down from minus 7.5 to 1.5, and KC from 8.5 to 2.5. Where, you know, both have to just win by a field goal at home. I don't think that's too much to ask. I'm also going to do A.J. Brown receiving yards prop over 71, 71.5 or 72.5. In the last 4 games, he's had 95, 97, 103, and 181 receiving yards. And I like that prop. I've been doing his prop a decent amount this year.
Brian, this one's interesting. Early on, I saw, you know, about a third of the money was on or a third of the bets were on Buffalo, but about 2/3 of the money kind of pushed that opening line from 4 to 5.5. Is it big for a reason, or is it too big and you like the Bengals?
Well, it's big because the Bengals have lost 3 starting offensive linemen in the last 3 weeks, and there's not many teams that can overcome that this time of year. However, you know, Joe Burrow had the worst O-line in the NFL last year, and he still had his team near midfield in the Super Bowl, down 1 possession with a chance to win. So, you know, I am concerned, extremely concerned about the O-line injuries. However, I'm more concerned about how Buffalo's playing. If Jalen Waddle doesn't play the worst game he's ever played in an NFL uniform or in any uniform his whole career, the Bills are on vacation and the Dolphins are still playing right now. The Bengals won 9 in a row, 7-1-1 against the spread, but they're 8-0-1 against the spread for me because I got a -6.5 early in the week last week. Only their 3rd underdog spot. They're 2-0 against the spread as dogs. They played 7 games against teams in the playoffs. They're 5-2 straight up. Lost by 3 at Dallas, by 2 at Baltimore. Buffalo has played 6 games against teams in the playoffs. They're 4-2 straight up, but none of their wins are by more than 4 points, which is relevant with this 5 to 5.5 point spread.
You know, something I'd add in with that Buffalo play too is an interception prop for Josh Allen, because boy, has he been reckless with the football lately.
Brian, you're talking, full disclosure, you're talking to the prop king over here in Andrew Rogers. My man is unbelievable.
Are you okay? Are you okay with my AJ Brown?
I loved it. I loved it. I wrote it down. That's the only thing in my notes section under his name right now is AJ Brown over 71.5.
Wow.
No joke. No joke. Hey, as we talk 49ers, that's a team that I don't know if anybody is as good at right now. Like this 49ers team is so good defensively. They are so structurally sound.
They seem like they have another gear too if they're struggling.
Oh my goodness, their personnel looks that they're working with. Is there a flashier team in football than the 49ers right now that just always make it work? And now the Cowboys are coming off of one of their best games. Thank goodness they could bounce back in week 18. But 3.5 for the 49ers seems low, does it not, Brian?
Yeah, it's super low. I made it 7.5. You know, I've been riding this Niners team for months.
Yeah.
They've 11 in a row, 9-2 against the spread. Their home victories here lately are by margins of 18, 25, 17, 28, 16, and 13. I don't think a lot of people are putting much emphasis on the fact that, you know, Dallas did not leave Tampa till after midnight, late Monday night or early Tuesday morning, whichever you prefer. And San Fran hadn't played since Saturday afternoon, 2 extra days of rest and preparation, and, you know, tack on, you know, 4 or 5 hours on top of the 2 days too. And yeah, I love the 49ers. My favorite play of the week. And if you want to put a little more on them in a different way, their team total over 12.5 in the first half. They've had at least 14 by halftime in 7 of their last 9.
Hey, B, let me ask you something, because the NFL can be a little tricky with this. But do you look at head-to-head coaching matchups? I look at Shanahan and McCarthy, and I just think, I'll take Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
I mean, but the NFL is tough to do that because it's so quarterback-driven, but it seems like I would do that in this particular instance.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that I give Dallas a quarterback advantage either, which sounds wild, but you know, Brock Purdy hadn't been turning the ball over like Dak. Now, he had a good game the other night, but he had turned it over, 7 or 8 games in a row before that, or at least one.
Tied for the most in the league.
Yeah, exactly, and that was with playing 5 fewer games.
Let's jump to the NBA, just because why not? I love the NBA. And Celtics, Warriors. Celtics, they're streaking. The Warriors always dangerous when they feel like playing. But man, 5.5 seems like a lot. This is a heck of a cross-conference matchup.
Yeah, I got to go with Boston here. They've won 7 in a row, 4 wins by 11 or more, 5 of them by at least 8. And Jaylen Brown's questionable. but I like it anyway, and I love it as he's upgraded. Golden State's been horrible on the road all year, 5-17 straight up, 5-16-1 against the spread. The Celtics have had a couple of days off, playing great. I got to lay the number with the Celtics.
And then looking down the list there, you have the Nets tonight, who have been a fantastic team this year too. And now they're after a huge winning stretch where they only had like one loss in how many games? Do you like 17?
They might be having the KD
and now
effects now.
Right now they have lost 3 in a row, still a 1.5 favorite against the Suns. Do you like the Nets there?
Man, so many. Well, obviously KD out, and Kyrie missed. I don't know if it's the last game or 2 games ago. Yeah, and Phoenix is so banged up. No Shamet, no Chris Paul, no Booker. I would probably lean Brooklyn, but I'm not saying I'm going to take it.
Let me get you out of here on this. Do you think Phoenix bounces back even? I mean, no, they had missed Payne last week. Crowder, whatever's going on with that situation. A Kogi, like you already mentioned Paul and Shamet. Do you think Phoenix can light switch this thing?
Well, I think we got to give them the benefit of the doubt to see once they're whole and healthy and have a couple weeks to see how they look before we bury them, especially with Booker, man, because Booker's probably a top 5 player in the league. I know CP3 isn't anymore, but let's let CP3 get healthy and not have to carry them when he's got Booker, when he's got Cam Johnson, Payne, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm gonna, give them a couple weeks once they get whole, and then I'll decide.
Enjoy the early hoops with the Bulls and Pistons today, B. Good talking to you.
See you, Brian.
All right. All right, fellas. You have a great weekend.
Hey, you too. And goodbye to you as well. Thanks for joining us on Coffee and Cream. Yeah, wave forward. Goodbye to you. This is like a DB wave. Goodbye to you. Go to Morning Dump. That's where we'll be next.